We interrupt our previously scheduled broadcast of Brittany from Big Brother 16 to bring you Archie Andrews from the Archie comics. I've decided to alternate my tutorials, and we are almost halfway through the Big Brother 16 cast members, and I decided that I would switch it up and bring you different tutorials a couple of times a week or 3 times a week, whatever I can manage. And today we are going to be doing Archie. And I'll be using a standard rainbow loom in the offset position. And the bands I'll be using are orange for his hair, the light peach skin tone bands for his skin, teal or turquoise, neon orange, dark blue, red, and white. I will also be using e-beads for his eyes. We're going to start with his sleeves, and I will need turquoise bands, skin tone bands, and 2 neon orange. We will start with 2 turquoise bands from the 6th peg from the bottom to the 5th peg from the bottom on the right, and we're going to do that 2 times. And then we will use skin tone bands, 2 skin tone bands 3 times to the end of the pin. And I'm going to cap this with a single skin tone band wrapped 3 times around the peg. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. 2 turquoise bands from the 6th peg up from the bottom, 2 more turquoise bands, followed by 2 skin tone bands 3 times to the end of the pin. And just to clarify, I refer to the pin as this whole row, and one individual peg on the pin is what I call a peg. So 2 skin tone bands 3 times down the left side, and we will cap this with a skin tone band wrapped 3 times. We're going to take a neon orange band and wrap it 3 times around our hook, and then we will begin to loop, and we want to make sure we grab the bottom 2 bands and that we are forming a teardrop shape. And once we get to our first turquoise band, we want to slide these orange bands down onto that turquoise loop and then loop it over the peg. And before we loop the other side, we're going to wrap our neon orange band around our hook and then loop, again grabbing both bands and making sure we have a teardrop shape. Once again, when we grab the first 2 turquoise bands, we're going to slide the neon orange bands down onto those and loop them ahead. And then we can take this off and put it on our holding hook. And we will set this aside. For the sneakers, we want to use 2 dark blue bands for the bottom of his jeans, and red bands and white bands. So what we're going to do is put 2 dark blue bands from the 3rd peg from the bottom on the right to the 2nd peg from the bottom, and 2 red bands from the second peg to the first peg, and we will cap this with a single white band wrapped 3 times around the peg. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. 2 dark blue bands, 2 red blue bands, capped with a single white band wrapped 3 times around the peg. And we can loop this. Making sure we grab both bands and that we're forming the teardrop or raindrop shape. And we can put these on our holding hook. And we'll set this aside. And now we're going to do his nose and his ears with skin tone bands. And for the ears, I'm going to take a single skin tone band and wrap it 3 times around my hook. I'm going to take another skin tone band and double it and slide the 3 loops onto that skin tone band. I'm going to take another skin tone band and wrap it 3 times around my hook. And again, a skin tone band and double it and thread these 3 loops onto the double looped band. And these are the ears, which I will also place on the holding hook. And now we can do his nose, and I'm going to take a single skin tone band and double it, wrap it 3 times around my hook. I'm going to take another skin tone band and double it and slide the bands from my hook onto the double loop band. And this will be his nose, which I attach when I'm looping, so I'm just going to leave it here on my hook out of the way. To make our eyes, we're going to use beads, and I'm going to need white bands. I'm going to take a single white band and double it and tuck my floss through. And what I'm using is actually the grass that you would line an Easter basket with. I'm going to slide my bead down the floss, catching the end so that I can slide the bead onto my double loop white band. I'm then going to put this eye on the hook, both ends of the white band, and I will take another single white band and double it, tuck my floss in, and again slide the bead down the floss, catching the end so that we can slide it onto the white band. I'm going to put this eye on my hook, and you can use bands to make the eyes, and all you would do is take whichever color eye you wanted to have, double it, wrap it 3 times around your hook, and thread it onto a double loop white band. And once you have both of those done, whether you're using beads or bands, you would then take your eyes and slide them onto a single skin tone band. And this we're going to place on our holding hook. To make the letter R, what we're going to do is use neon orange bands, and I'm going to take a single band and wrap it 5 or 6 times around my hook. And I'm going to do that 2 times. Then I want to take a single neon orange band and slide all of these loops onto this band. We'll push them down so there's room for the other ones. And there we have one part. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take one end and for now put it around one of the pegs to hold it. And we're going to repeat that, a single band wrapped 6 times around my hook. I want to do that with 2 bands. And then I want to slide all of these loops onto a single band. And this I will also place on a peg to hold it for now. And we want to do that again. We'll take a single neon orange band and wrap it 6 times around our hook. And we'll do that with 2 bands. And then we're going to slide all of these loops onto a single neon orange band. And we'll spread them out as best we can. We're going to do that again. We need 4 altogether. And we'll slide that onto a single band. Slide them down so there's room for the next one. And we'll slide these loops over. And there we go. And once we have 4, we can take them and put them on a holding hook. And we will set these aside. And now we can band our loom. And what we're going to do is start with the hair, and I'm going to take 2 dark orange bands and put them from the first peg in the center to the second peg in the center. And I'm going to put 2 dark orange bands from the first peg on the left to the first peg in the center, and 2 dark orange bands from the first peg in the center to the first peg on the right. I'm then going to go down the left side 2 times with dark orange bands, and the same thing on the right. 2 dark orange bands going down the right side 2 times. And for his face, I'm going to put 2 skin tone bands 3 times going down the center, and I use 3 skin tone bands for the neck, And then we will put 2 skin tone bands going down the left and 2 skin tone bands going down the right. We will close off his face by putting 2 skin tone bands from the 4th peg on the left to the 5th peg in the center, and 2 skin tone bands from the 5th peg in the center to the 4th peg on the right. For the shirt, I'm going to put 1 turquoise band and 1 neon orange band going down the center, 1 turquoise band and 1 neon orange band from the 6th peg in the center to the 6th peg on the left, and 1 neon orange and 1 turquoise band from the 6th peg in the center to the 6th peg on the right. We can continue with his shirt, this time using 2 turquoise bands, and we're going to go 3 times down the left side, and 3 times with 2 turquoise bands going down the right side. To finish off the center of the shirt, we are going to put 2 turquoise bands going down the center 2 times. Now we're going to move on to the jeans, and I'm using dark blue for the jeans. We are going to put 2 dark blue bands going down the center and 2 dark blue bands 4 times going down the left. I'm going to do the same thing on the right side, 2 dark blue bands 4 times, finishing off the right side pin. To close off his jeans, we're going to put 2 dark blue bands from the 4th peg up in the center to the 5th peg up on the left, and the 4th peg up from the bottom in the center to the 5th peg up on the right. And this we will cap with a single dark blue band wrapped 3 times around the center. And now we're ready for our holding bands, and I'm going to put a dark orange band around the 1st peg on the left and the right, and the 2nd peg in the center, a skin tone band around the 2nd peg on the left and the right, and the 3rd peg in the center. I'm going to skip the 3rd pegs and put a skin tone band around the 4th peg on the left and the right, and the 4th peg in the center. Moving down to the shirt, I'm going to put a single turquoise band around the 7th pegs on the left, the right, and in the center, and a single turquoise band around the 8th pegs on the left, the right, and in the center. Our last holding band will be a dark blue band around the 9th pegs on the left, the right, and in the center. And now we can add our attachments. I'll start with the eyes, and they go from the 3rd peg down on the left, and separating the eyes, I want to loop 1 of the bands around the 3rd peg in the center and the other end over the 3rd peg on the right. Next, we can attach his ears, and they will go on the 2nd peg down from the top on the left, and the 2nd peg on the right, Next we will attach his sneakers, and they go one on the bottom peg on the left and one on the bottom peg on the right. And lastly, we will attach his arms, and here you want to make sure that the orange bands that we attached are facing up. So one will go on the 6th peg down on the left, and the other will go on the 6th peg down on the right. And now we're ready to loop, and we want to make sure that we have our letter attachments. They will be attached when we loop the shirt. So we're going to start in the center, reach inside the cap band, and grab the top 2 bands, which will loop to the right. The next 2 bands will go to the left. Then we're going to go down to the left, the last peg on the left, and we will loop forward. And before we loop the last dark blue bands, we want to attach one end of the neon orange over the peg, and then we can loop the dark blue bands forward. And we'll remove this side from our holding hook. And what I want to do before I loop the turquoise bands, I want to stretch my neon orange bands and reach inside the orange band and all of the blue bands, grabbing just the bottom 2 turquoise bands, and I'm going to loop those through the orange band and up over the peg. And then I can loop the next turquoise bands, staying inside the holding band. Before I loop the last turquoise bands, I want to stretch the orange bands up over the peg, and I can reach inside the orange bands and grab the bottom 2 turquoise bands and loop it up over the last peg. We're going to start in the center, reach inside the cap band and grab the top 2 bands, which are going to the right, the next 2 bands, which go to the left, and before we loop up the left side, we're going to take one of our letter pieces and attach it to the 5th peg up from the bottom on the left and the 5th peg up from the bottom on the right. And now we can loop the left side, and we're going to go in and grab just the bottom 2 bands and loop them forward, making sure we form our teardrop shape. And we'll just go to the end of the dark blue. And now we can loop up the right side. We're going to reach inside our sneaker attachment and grab the bottom 2 bands and loop them forward. And once we've looped the last 2 dark blue bands, we can stretch our orange band around the 8th peg down from the top in the center. And we can now also attach another letter attachment, also on the 8th peg down in the center, and the 6th peg on the right. And we want to put our last attachment from the 6th peg on the right. We want to separate our 2 sections of bands and loop 1 band over the 6th peg in the center and the end of the band over the 6th peg on the left. And now we can continue looping. On the right side, we want to reach in and grab just the bottom 2 turquoise bands and loop them forward, staying inside the holding bands and making sure to grab just the bottom 2 bands, and that we are forming our teardrop shape. When we get to the last, we want to make sure that we are reaching through all of these bands, and we want to grab an orange and a turquoise band. And you want to make sure that you have the right 2, the ones that are on the very bottom, and we will loop those around the center. Okay, we have 2 more sections to do on the left side. We're going to reach inside the orange bands and the holding band and grab the bottom 2 turquoise bands and loop them forward. And reaching inside all of the bands at the arm, we're going to grab an orange band and a blue band and loop them up around the center peg. Now we can loop up the center, reaching in and grabbing the bottom 2 bands and looping those forward, again staying inside the holding bands and making sure that we form our teardrop shape. And when we get to the neck, we want to remember that we've put 3 bands here, so we want to grab all 3 skin tone bands and loop them forward. And then we want to reach inside and grab the top 2 bands, and they will go to the right. The next 2 bands will go to the left, and the last 2 will go forward. Here is where we attach the nose. So I'm going to reach in and grab those 2 bands and just slide my nose down onto those bands before looping it forward and around the 3rd peg from the top. And now we can continue up the left side, grabbing the bottom 2 bands and making sure that we have our raindrop shape. And we are going to loop all the way to the top center peg. We're going to do the same thing on the right, staying inside the holding bands, making sure not to catch the eye bands, and forming our raindrop shapes as we go. Now we can loop the last 2 sections in the center. And we want to check that we have looped every band. And for this, we want to pay particular attention to the shirt area where we have looped and attached the letter bands. And that looks good. So we can attach our holding band. We want to reach inside all of the bands at the top center peg, grab a single dark orange band, pull it up through, and form our slip knot. And now we can remove this from the loom, and I'm starting at the bottom. I don't want to stretch the figure too much. I find that for bracelets you may want it to be stretched a little bit, but for characters and charms you probably want it to keep its shape as best it can. So it's usually best to loop from the bottom to the top. And when we get to an area like the neck, I like to put my hook inside and roll it around the peg to loosen those bands. There's a lot of bands there, and we don't want to stretch them or risk breaking them. And the rest should come off fairly easily. The same with the nose area. Reaching my hook in and rolling it around the peg. And the last one. So this is what he looks like when we first take him off the loom. Not much to look at, but all he needs is a little tweaking. I'm going to fix his eyes. Now we'll go down and fix his sneakers. I want his sneakers to point to the outside a little bit, so I'm going to put my hook in through the teardrop shape and just give it a little tug to the side, and that will point his shoe to the outside. You could also use your hands for this. Just grab a hold of the bands and pull it a little to the side. What we want to do at his shoulders, these bands that we've attached for the letters, you want to reach in between the bands and just pry this section of the letter band up through the looped band to that peg so that they're visible. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. Just pry that up so it's poking through on the right side as well. And we can spread the bands out a little bit. You can adjust these as straight and as flat as you would like. Just reach your hook inside all of the loops and just roll it a little bit, and that will straighten them out if they happen to be kind of bunched up. And there we go. I want to squeeze his waist in just a little bit to give him a little bit of definition. And I also want his arms to point down to his sides a little bit. So I'm going to reach my hook in and give a little tug. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Again, you can use your hands for this. Just pull the bands to position them the way you want. Now in the photo, Archie has his hands in his pockets. So if you want, you can attach this with a C-clip, or you can just bend his elbows so that it looks like his hands are in his pockets like that. I'm just going to adjust his ears a little bit. And next we have to attach a mouth, and for that I'm going to use a skin tone band. And I'm going to reach my hook in from the back to the front in the general area of where the mouth is. Grab a hold of my skin tone band, pull it through to the back. Again, putting my hook from the back to the front. I'm going to grab the other end of the band and pull it through to the back. And now what I can do is secure this band with a C-clip. And then I can adjust his mouth. And you can play with this and tweak it and get it to look the way that you want it to look. And the last thing we need to do is secure the slip knot band. But to do that, we're just going to pull it through a couple of bands at the back of the head. You could also attach it to that C-clip if you want. We just want to tuck this out of the way. And I know that's not the best looking R on his shirt. If you have any better suggestions or other suggestions, I would love to hear them. Please comment below and let me know what you think. So this is Archie Andrews from the Archie comic book series. Please like and subscribe. I have a total of 36 Archie characters that I have designed. I don't know that I will do tutorials for all of them, but let me know what you think. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm also going to be continuing with the Big Brother 16 cast members, also with Stampy Cat characters from Minecraft, and among several others. So please subscribe, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.